Hello, Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. India has cleared a massive $9 billion defense deal. It's a boost for Made in India weapons and a message to our adversaries. India does not want war, but it is prepared for one. Meanwhile, as global economies stumble, India defies the headwinds. New projections show strong growth for the year ahead. In Moscow, President Putin says he won't bow down to US pressure as oil sanctions push up prices and force Russian buyers to recalibrate. In Washington, a commercial break turns into a diplomatic break. Trump has called off trade talks with Canada over an ad. Back home, Delhi is fighting pollution, testing cloud seeding to make artificial rain. Trump is spending $300 million to build a ballroom in the White House. We'll tell you who's paying for it. The US has launched another strike in the Caribbean. Is this shaping into a military conflict with Venezuela? The IITs are looking beyond your exam scores for admission, and sports could be the new ticket. Also, a gambling scandal has rocked the NBA. It's a story straight out of Hollywood. All this and more coming up. The headlines first. US President Donald Trump set to begin a major tour of Asia. He will be visiting Malaysia, Japan and South Korea. It is Trump's first visit to the region since he returned to the White House. He will meet Chinese President Xi Jinping next week. This comes amid a trade war between the world's two biggest economies. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer hosts Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky ahead of a summit with Kiev's key backers in London. Starmer says allies should supply Ukraine with more long-range weapons. This follows Zelensky's meeting with Donald Trump last week, where his request for long-range Tomahawks was rebuffed. Germany's foreign minister postpones his visit to China as trade tensions continue between the European Union and Beijing. China has announced new controls on the export of rare earth technologies. The EU says the move will inflict economic harm on the bloc. A big win for Turkey's main opposition party. An Ankara court dismisses a case which sought to oust its leader. But the jailed Istanbul mayor is hit by a new charge of espionage. His arrest in March had triggered widespread protests. He is seen as a top challenger to the Turkish president for the 2028 election. And the European Union accuses Meta and TikTok of breaking the bloc's digital content rules. Facebook, Instagram and TikTok could be facing hefty fines. This is the first time Meta has been accused of breaching the Digital Services Act. The tech giant has denied the charge. $79,000 crore rupees, or $9 billion US dollars. That's how much India is splurging on defense. It's part of the larger military goal to be a modern force, to be a lethal force, and to be a vigilant force. So yesterday, the Indian military's top decision-making body convened. That's the DAC, or the Defence Acquisition Council, DAC. This council decides which weapons to buy. It also allocates money for those purchases. The latest approval is for weapons worth $9 billion. Let's look at the breakdown. The army is getting three main things. First is the Nag missile system. This is a homegrown anti-tank guided missile. The Nag missile. The army is set to order more than 2,000 of them. Second is the ground-based mobile ELINT system. Think of these as intelligence hubs on trucks. They can track and identify enemy assets. And the third is high mobility vehicles, basically a military Humvee. These are rugged all-terrain vehicles. They are used to ferry troops and for logistics. These are the three main purchases for the Indian Army. Now we come to the Navy. The Indian Navy is getting landing platform docks. These are basically amphibious ships They can carry the land elements of your military, like your tanks or Humvees or soldiers. These ships can land those assets into a war zone. They have uses outside conflict areas too. Say the Navy is carrying out a rescue or a humanitarian operation after a disaster. Again, these landing docks will be crucial. Beyond these ships, the Navy is also getting some serious firepower, 30mm naval guns, advanced lightweight torpedoes, which are like underwater missiles, and smart ammunition for the 76mm super rapid guns. This is what the Indian Navy is set to get. Clearly, the landing docks stand out as a game changer, which brings us to the Air Force, the Indian Air Force. What are they getting? They're getting something called CLRTS, Collaborative Long Range Target Saturation. In simpler words, these are swarm drones. I'm sure you heard of kamikaze or suicide drones. Now imagine those drones hunting in a pack. That's what makes them swarm drones. They can take off, navigate, and target independently. They have a range of more than 1,000 kilometers. So these drone swarms will first enter enemy territory. They will navigate and find the target. And finally, they will launch a coordinated suicide attack. Again, this could be a game changer. Plus, the Air Force is also getting some replenishments. Reports say the military will buy S-400 missiles from Russia. Not the missile systems, just the missiles. A number of them were used up against Pakistan during Operation Sindoor. So the Air Force is replacing them. And that sums up the latest splurge. Now, if you have to pick one standout, it has to be the landing docks. The plan is to build 4 of them, each weighing more than 20,000 tons. These ships are expected to cost 33,000 crore rupees. So 40% of this new spending is on these 4 landing ships. Now, who will build them? It could be any Indian shipyard. Any of them can place a competitive bid, and the best one will get the deal. That's another feature of the spending plan. It's a mix of domestic and foreign. For example, the Nag missiles are built in India. So are the mobile radars and the military vehicles. But the S-400 missiles, well, those will have to be purchased from Russia. As this news came in, Indian defense stocks began to zoom. Cochin Shipyard closed 1.7% up today. Bharat Dynamics rose by 1.6% and Bharat Electronics rose by around 1%. And this is despite the Sensex closing in the red. If all of this sounds a bit familiar, do not be surprised. We saw the same thing in August. Back then, the Defense Ministry approved purchases worth 67,000 crores, which is around $7.6 billion. So that's 2 big approvals in less than 3 months. Put together, it's almost 1.5 lakh crore rupees. So what's the plan here? The first objective is long-term. India is on a mission to modernize its armed forces, and a modern military needs these things. Whether it's a landing dock or a drone swarm or a mobile radar, we need all of this. They are crucial to warfare in the 21st century. That's the first part. Secondly, there's a short-term goal. A lot of weapons were used in the clashes with Pakistan. It is important to replenish those stocks immediately. With these 2 military approvals, India is sending a very clear message. We don't want war, but we are ready for it. Let's talk about the Indian economy. There's more good news to share. So far, India has managed to weather global headwinds and absorb the initial shock of tariffs. Now, fresh projections are out. They say India will keep growing above 6%. That's according to Deloitte. This week, Deloitte released a report. It has a new forecast for India. It says the Indian economy will grow between 6.7 and 6.9%. This is for the current financial year. What about the next year? Well, Deloitte expects the same momentum to continue. They say India will keep growing above 6% next year. This is in line with other global projections. The IMF released its outlook this month. That's the International Monetary Fund. They said India would grow at 6.6%. The IMF's managing director is Kristalina Georgieva. She praised India's performance. She called it a key growth engine.
Global growth forecasted around 3% over the medium term, way below the pre-pandemic 3.7% level. Global growth patterns have been changing over the years, notably with China decelerating steadily, while India is turning into a key growth engine.
Georgieva compared India with China. She said China is slowing down while India remains steady. So what's helping India grow? Well, the RBI has some answers. The RBI is the Reserve Bank of India, the Indian Central Bank. It has released a report called State of the Economy. It says, while India is not completely immune to global problems, its economy has remained strong and steady. And the report discusses some trends. First, spending is up. In cities, there is more demand, and in villages, it's even stronger. The farm sector is doing well too. Agriculture has been helped by good rainfall and higher crop planting. This is helping the sector grow. Manufacturing has slowed slightly, but business confidence is rising. In its report, the RBI discusses recent surveys. It says both factories and service sectors are optimistic. And there's also some good news on prices. Inflation is falling, especially retail inflation. It's the rate at which prices of everyday goods go up. And this rise is slow. So retail inflation is falling. In September, it fell to 1.54%. This is the lowest level in more than 7 years. And it's way below the RBI's target of 4%. In fact, food prices have gone down. The costs that are still rising are for metals like gold and housing. Those are going up. But the long-term story remains positive. At the same time, the RBI has also spelled out some risks. First is the global uncertainty. Uncertainty caused by tariffs and trade wars. The RBI has flagged this unpredictability as a risk. This can create headwinds for India. It can impact Indian exports and investments. So that's the first risk. The second risk is a slowdown in foreign investments. In recent months, there has been a slowdown in FDI, foreign direct investment. In fact, in August, India's FDI turned negative. What does that mean? What's negative? It means that more money was taken out of the country than was invested in it. And that presents a long-term challenge. The third risk is rising debt in rich countries. In wealthy nations, government debt is extremely high. It has reached about 110% of the total GDP. That's close to record levels. For countries like India, this is a real concern. It raises the likelihood of a sudden shock, like a sharp change in currency values or a rise in interest rates. Such events can have a ripple effect on the Indian economy, and that's the toughest part to manage. In the past, global policies were largely predictable. Currencies were largely stable and sudden changes were rare. But that is no longer the case. So the task ahead for India's policymakers is to manage this uncertainty. Because while our economy has shown resilience so far, the test is not over. It's like we're back in the 20th century. World powers are battling over a crucial resource. It's not chips or rare earths, it's oil once again. This week, Donald Trump fired the first shot. He put sanctions on two major Russian oil giants, something even Europe had not done yet. And yesterday, Vladimir Putin fired back. He called Trump's move an unfriendly act. He also admitted that it would have certain consequences. At the same time, Putin showed defiance. He refused to bow under pressure.
Yes, they are of a serious nature for us. Of course, this is understandable, and they will have certain consequences, but still they will not significantly affect our economic well-being. This, of course, is an attempt to put pressure on Russia. But no self-respecting country and no self-respecting people ever decide anything under pressure. And, of course, Russia has such a privilege to feel and consider itself on this list of self-respecting countries and peoples.
This is not what Trump wanted to hear. His goal was to pile the pressure on Russia to force Putin to make concessions. But the Russian president is unwilling to do that. He says he will not decide anything under US pressure. However, he kept the door open for talks.
The US president has decided to cancel or postpone this meeting. It seems he is talking about postponing it. I can say that a dialogue is always better than confrontation, arguments, or even more so, war.
This has been Putin's long-standing position. He wants to end the war via talks, but he won't budge from his red lines. And what about the other side? Well, Trump was supposed to meet Putin in Budapest next month, but this week he put that meeting on hold. It's a pause, not a cancellation. The White House is also open to more talks.
Between these two leaders is not completely off the table. I think the president and the entire administration hopes that one day that can happen again, but we want to make sure that there's a tangible positive outcome out of that meeting and that it's a good use of the president's time.
Now let's address three questions tonight. If both sides want to meet, why aren't they meeting? That's question number one. How is Russia bracing for Trump's sanctions? That's question number two. And what could Trump do next? The US president is looking for tangible outcomes. He wanted to leave Budapest with a ceasefire, and for that he proposed freezing the front line, basically stopping the fighting as things stand. Ukraine agreed to that, but Putin did not, which is probably why Trump postponed the meeting. He wanted a solution in Budapest. Putin wanted a process. That answers the first question. Question number two, how is Russia bracing for sanctions? Well, the latest ones are coming at a really bad time for them. Russia's GDP growth is almost zero, meaning the economy is stagnating. So today, the Russian central bank stepped in. They reduced lending rates by 0.5%. Moscow is hoping that this cut will boost the economy. Also, these sanctions have secondary impact. Say you're a bank in China or India or Brazil, and you finance Russian oil purchases, then you could also face American sanctions. Look at what China is doing. Beijing state refiners are reducing Russian oil imports. Some are also abandoning Russia's shadow fleet. Do you know why? Because there's a ring of sanctions now. The US has sanctioned the Russian oil sellers, the EU has sanctioned the gas firms, and Britain has sanctioned the shadow fleet. The idea is to box in Russia's sales. But there's a problem. Russia supplies 4 to 5 million barrels of oil per day. If you take out some of that, the prices will rise. And we saw that this week. Oil prices are 7% up since Monday. And what happens when oil prices rise? Your inflation also rises. Everything costs more. So it's a battle of attrition between the two sides. Yes, Russia's revenues will be hit, but the US and its allies will also face inflation at home. Which brings us to the last question. What could Trump do next? On paper, he can put more pressure on Russia. How will he do that? By selling Ukraine Tomahawk cruise missiles. Kiev is desperate to get their hands on this weapon, and if they do, they can strike deep inside Russian land. Again, here's the problem. It comes with significant risk, and Putin warned against this move yesterday.
It's an attempt of escalation. If there are strikes with this weapon on Russian territory, the response will be very serious, not to say stunning. Let them think about it.
Those are strong words. Putin says there will be strong and stunning consequences. The question is, will Trump risk that? His intention to end the war is actually a good one. The problem is the process. Trump wants to keep both sides happy. He wants a deal that is appreciated by both Ukraine and Russia. But is that even possible? Russia is a nuclear power sitting on 1/5 of Ukraine's land. In what world would Putin give that up? Trump needs to understand this ground reality, and so does Ukraine. You can't gain on the table what you lost on the battlefield.
When someone says, let's impose tariffs on foreign imports, it looks like they're doing the patriotic thing, but over the long run, such trade barriers hurt every American worker and consumer. America's jobs and growth are at stake.
It looks like Donald Trump can be triggered by anything. A newspaper headline, a protest against his policies, a group of countries peacefully meeting, or even a social media post. Back in his first term, he cancelled a state visit to Denmark. This was in 2019. Do you know the reason? Denmark refused to sell Greenland to him. So he cancelled the visit. Clearly anything can trigger him, and yesterday it happened again. This time, it was not a world leader or a press conference. It was a television ad from America's closest neighbor. A 1-minute clip from Canada. This ad used the voice of former US President Ronald Reagan. And that was enough to set Trump off. He has announced that the US is ending all trade negotiations with Canada. Trade talks cancelled. He said this on his social media platform Truth Social. Trump wrote that Canada had fraudulently used, these are the words he used, fraudulently used the voice of Ronald Reagan in a fake advertisement about tariffs. He claimed that the video was designed to interfere with the decision of the US Supreme Court. The court is due to rule next month on whether Trump's tariffs are legal. But what was this advertisement that triggered him? It was produced by the government of Ontario, that is Canada's largest province. This was a 1-minute clip aimed at American viewers. Now, reports say it's part of a roughly $54 million US campaign. The video used excerpts from a 1987 radio address by Ronald Reagan, an address that he made in 1987. In this address, Reagan warned that high tariffs inevitably lead to retaliation and trade wars. Now, in this ad that Canada has made, Reagan's voice plays over footage of American workers. It shows the New York Stock Exchange and cargo ships flying both US and Canadian flags. The Reagan Presidential Foundation has objected to it. They say the audio had been edited out of sequence and it was used without permission. And Trump was quick to take it up. He used it to justify his announcement against Canada, his announcement to cut off the trade talks. He also claimed that Canada has long cheated on tariffs. What about Canada's response? Well, their Prime Minister Mark Carney said his government will, and I'm quoting again, stand ready, prepared to continue trade discussions when Washington is prepared.
We can't control the trade policy of the United States. We stand ready to pick up on that progress and build on that progress when the Americans are ready to have those discussions, because it will be for the benefit of workers in the United States, workers in Canada, and families in both of our countries.
But here's the thing. This is not just about Canada. Trump's reactions have become a defining feature of his second term. In February, he ordered the Ukrainian delegation out of the White House. This was after a heated meeting with President Volodymyr Zelensky. They kept pushing him to say thank you. They asked why he wasn't wearing a suit. He refused Trump's demand for an immediate ceasefire, and the talks collapsed dramatically and publicly. Then in July, it was the BRICS summit in Brazil. The leaders met to discuss trade and currency cooperation. Brazil, India, China, Russia, South Africa, and other BRICS countries. They met. Trump called it an anti-American group. He threatened new tariffs on BRICS nations. And his outbursts are not limited to foreign policy. He has walked out of press conferences that he did not like. In May 2020, he ended a briefing midway after a reporter questioned his COVID response. So whether it's a tariff ad, a multilateral summit, a reporter's question, or a street protest, anything can provoke Donald Trump. His reactions are no longer moments of anger, they're becoming instruments of policy. From trade decisions to diplomatic ties, everything depends on his temper. For America's allies, that's the new reality, a White House that reacts first and thinks later. Because under Donald Trump, Even a commercial break can become a diplomatic break.
When someone says, let's impose tariffs on foreign imports, it looks like they're doing the patriotic thing, but over the long run, such trade barriers hurt every American worker and consumer. America's jobs and growth are at stake.
It looks like Donald Trump can be triggered by anything. A newspaper headline, a protest against his policies, a group of countries peacefully meeting, or even a social media post. Back in his first term, he cancelled a state visit to Denmark. This was in 2019. Do you know the reason? Denmark refused to sell Greenland to him. So he cancelled the visit. Clearly anything can trigger him, and yesterday it happened again. This time, it was not a world leader or a press conference. It was a television ad from America's closest neighbor. A 1-minute clip from Canada. This ad used the voice of former US President Ronald Reagan. And that was enough to set Trump off. He has announced that the US is ending all trade negotiations with Canada. Trade talks cancelled. He said this on his social media platform Truth Social. Trump wrote that Canada had fraudulently used, these are the words he used, fraudulently used the voice of Ronald Reagan in a fake advertisement about tariffs. He claimed that the video was designed to interfere with the decision of the US Supreme Court. The court is due to rule next month on whether Trump's tariffs are legal. But what was this advertisement that triggered him? It was produced by the government of Ontario, that is Canada's largest province. This was a 1-minute clip aimed at American viewers. Now, reports say it's part of a roughly $54 million US campaign. The video used excerpts from a 1987 radio address by Ronald Reagan, an address that he made in 1987. In this address, Reagan warned that high tariffs inevitably lead to retaliation and trade wars. Now, in this ad that Canada has made, Reagan's voice plays over footage of American workers. It shows the New York Stock Exchange and cargo ships flying both US and Canadian flags. The Reagan Presidential Foundation has objected to it. They say the audio had been edited out of sequence and it was used without permission. And Trump was quick to take it up. He used it to justify his announcement against Canada, his announcement to cut off the trade talks. He also claimed that Canada has long cheated on tariffs. What about Canada's response? Well, their Prime Minister Mark Carney said his government will, and I'm quoting again, stand ready, prepared to continue trade discussions when Washington is prepared.
We can't control the trade policy of the United States. We stand ready to pick up on that progress and build on that progress when the Americans are ready to have those discussions, because it will be for the benefit of workers in the United States, workers in Canada, and families in both of our countries.
But here's the thing. This is not just about Canada. Trump's reactions have become a defining feature of his second term. In February, he ordered the Ukrainian delegation out of the White House. This was after a heated meeting with President Volodymyr Zelensky. You saw it on the show, and I'm sure elsewhere too. They kept pushing him to say thank you. They asked why he wasn't wearing a tie and a suit. And he refused Trump's demand for an immediate ceasefire. The talks collapsed dramatically and publicly. Then in July, it was the BRICS summit in Brazil. The leaders met to discuss trade and currency cooperation. Brazil, India, China, Russia, South Africa, and other BRICS countries. They met. Trump called it an anti-American group. He threatened new tariffs on BRICS nations. And his outbursts are not limited to foreign policy. He has walked out of press conferences that he did not like. In May 2020, he ended a briefing midway after a reporter questioned his COVID response. So whether it's a tariff ad, a multilateral summit, a reporter's question, or a street protest, anything can provoke Donald Trump. His reactions are no longer moments of anger, they're becoming instruments of policy. From trade decisions to diplomatic ties, everything depends on his temper. For America's allies, that's the new reality, a White House that reacts first and thinks later. Because under Donald Trump, even a commercial break can become a diplomatic break. Now let's talk about India's capital, New Delhi. It is trying something new and a bit bold. For the first time, the city is turning to the skies to fight smog. It is deploying cloud seeding to create artificial rain. The goal is to wash away the thick layer of pollution. Last week, a test flight took off from IIT Kanpur. It could not produce any rain, but scientists want to try again. 5 more tests are planned, and if it works, cloud seeding could become a regular tool to fight pollution. Other Indian states have tried it too, and many countries have cloud seeding programs. Experts say it does help in fighting pollution, but only a little. Here's a report.
Delhi is trying to make it rain. Literally, the city has launched its first cloud seeding experiment. It is a bold attempt to clean the air by creating artificial rain. Chief Minister Rekha Gupta says the goal is simple: to use rain to wash away the toxic smog that blankets the city every winter. Last week, a small aircraft took off from IIT Kanpur loaded with silver iodide and salt. These are harmless compounds released into the clouds to trigger rainfall. The trial took place over Barari in North Delhi. It was the city's first serious attempt to seed clouds. The result? No rain yet, because there wasn't enough moisture. Scientists say humidity was at just 15%. They needed at least 50% for the experiment to work. Still, officials call it a success. They say the test proved that Delhi is ready once the weather cooperates. The plan now is to carry out 5 full trials led by IIT Kanpur. If it works, Delhi could make artificial rain a regular tool against pollution. Cloud seeding isn't new to India. It's been tried before in Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra and Karnataka. Back in the 1970s, scientists used it to fight droughts in Tamil Nadu and Mumbai. In 2017, Karnataka launched Vashadhari, a project to increase rainfall in dry regions. But Delhi is the first Indian city to use it for pollution control, a different kind of crisis and a different kind of experiment. Around the world, cloud seeding is much more common. China runs the largest program on Earth, using aircraft and rockets to trigger rain, clear pollution, and even control weather during national events. In the United States, Western states seed clouds to boost snow and water supply. In the United Arab Emirates, aircraft and drones are used to make it rain in the deserts. Russia uses it to clear skies during parades. Indonesia and Thailand use it to fight forest fires and droughts. Even Australia and Saudi Arabia use it to boost rainfall for farming and hydropower. So Delhi isn't alone. It's joining a global club of countries trying to bend the weather to their will. But does it really work? Well, experts say only sometimes. Cloud seeding can increase rainfall by 10 to 30%, but it depends on many things: the kinds of clouds, the wind, the temperature, and the moisture. If there are no clouds, nothing happens. That's why scientists say it's not a magic fix. It can help, but it can't solve pollution on its own. Meanwhile, back on the ground, Delhi's air remains toxic. At the Delhi Secretariat, 15 air purifiers are being installed to protect staff from the city's pollution. Clearly, Delhi's air won't change overnight. There's still a long way to go before the capital can truly breathe easy.
Donald Trump is back to doing what he does best, building things nobody asked for. In his first term, it was the border wall. In his second term, it's a ballroom. This one is inside the White House. Price tag, $300 million. The construction has begun, so has the controversy. But Trump says it is music to his ears.
If I do this again, I'm going to get a ballroom built, and we're putting up our own money. With the government is paying for nothing. You probably hear the beautiful sound of construction to the back. You hear that sound? Oh, that's music to my ears. I love that sound. Other people don't like it. I love it, Josh. I think when I hear that sound, it reminds me of money. In this case, it reminds me of lack of money because I'm paying for it.
He clearly wants to leave his imprint on the White House, perhaps in 24-karat gold. He may be the president, but somewhere inside, the real estate developer refuses to check out. So Trump has been busy, redecorating America's most powerful address like it's a new golf resort. The Oval Office is now shinier, brighter, and of course more golden. The Cabinet Room, every light now comes with a medallion. At the Rose Garden, the grass is gone, replaced by paving stones. He's added new flagpoles to both lawns and replaced Biden's portrait with a photo of the auto pen, a not-so-subtle jab at his predecessor. But this time he wants more than a cosmetic upgrade. He wants an infrastructure masterpiece. Enter the ballroom, his dream project, his golden legacy, 90,000 square feet, almost twice the size of the presidential residence. Who needs history when you can have a hall? So Trump is sparing no expense to get the ballroom he wants.
Is very much involved in this. They want to make sure everything is absolutely beautiful. You can see the kind of interiors that we're talking about. That's an interior of the ballroom. And it's the highest level. And you see it goes beautifully with the White House. I mean, the mix is beautiful. So over the years, many presidents have made changes. This obviously would be the biggest change, but this was something they've wanted for at least 150 years.
They wanted it for 150 years, he says. And what's the price tag? Just a casual $300 million. The original estimate was $200 million, but like everything else in the Trump era, it inflated beautifully. And who's footing the bill? Not the taxpayers, thankfully. They are already funding a government that is shut down. Trump's ballroom is privately sponsored. The money is flowing in from America's richest and most influential, basically everyone who wants a seat at the next gala dinner. The list includes big tech, Apple, Amazon, Meta, Microsoft, and Google. It includes defense giants Lockheed Martin, Palantir, and Booz Allen Hamilton, and telecom giants T-Mobile and Comcast, and of course a few friends of the family. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, Blackstone's Stephen Schwarzman, and the crypto twins, Cameron and Tyler Winklevoss. And how much have they contributed? The White House won't say. But last week, the biggest donors got a special reward, a thank you dinner under the same roof they're paying to rebuild. Officials from Google, Amazon, and Lockheed Martin were present. Then on Monday, construction began. And like every Trump project, it's already making headlines. To build this ballroom, he's tearing down the entire east wing of the White House. Not a touch-up, it's total demolition. The east wing was built in 1902. It was redesigned in 1942. So it's been around for more than 100 years. It housed the First Lady's office, it had a private cinema, and it held generations of presidential history. Now it's all gone. Satellite images show the East Wing completely flattened. Trump says there was no other way. To get the ballroom in, the East Wing had to go.
In order to do it properly, we had to take down the existing structure. The way it was shown, it looked like we were touching the White House. We don't touch the White House. That's a bridge, a glass bridge, going from the White House to the ballroom. Then you get into the lobby of the ballroom, and then you go into the magnificent, the main room. And it's something that has gotten incredible reviews.
Trump says the project has received incredible reviews. Of course it has. When has he ever read a bad one? But not everyone's applauding. Critics say it's the biggest White House makeover in a generation. Other presidents made changes too. Thomas Jefferson added a wine cellar. Theodore Roosevelt built the West Wing, which has the Oval Office. Franklin D. Roosevelt added a pool. Richard Nixon, a bowling alley. Barack Obama, a basketball court. And now Trump is building a ballroom bigger than the president's residence and office. Some architects say this is a tragedy. With the East Wing gone, they've lost a piece of history. But it's too late for sentimentality. America's founding fathers dreamed of a house for democracy. Trump is building one with a dance floor. In the Caribbean, the conflict is heating up. Just a short while back, a fresh strike was reported. The 10th American strike in less than 2 months. Remember, the US has deployed serious firepower in the region, complete with a nuclear submarine. Troops are on standby. Washington says it's a war on drugs. South American countries say it's about regime change. It's probably a bit of both, and it's dangerous. The latest attack hit a small boat. It killed at least 6 people. Washington says the vessel was operated by a Venezuelan gang. It has been calling them narco-terrorists. Critics say America's strikes are illegal. As tensions rise, there's one question on everyone's mind. Will this snowball into a military conflict? Is Trump starting another war? Here's our report.
Tensions in the Caribbean are boiling. The United States has carried out its 10th military strike in less than 2 months. A U.S. strike hit a small boat overnight in the Caribbean. 6 people were killed. War Secretary Pete Hegseth said the vessel belonged to the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua. He confirmed the strike took place in international waters. Hegseth says the campaign targets drug traffickers. The U.S. military has struck 10 vessels since September, and the area of operations is expanding, from the Caribbean to the Eastern Pacific. Washington calls it an anti-narcotics mission. But so far, America has shown no public evidence that the boats were carrying drugs. Officials say the goal is to disrupt what they call narco-terror networks. But critics argue that the operations violate the UN Charter. They point out that the United States is using lethal force in foreign waters without clear evidence or legal mandate. The strikes have now killed more than 35 people, and they are taking place dangerously close to the Venezuelan territory. Caracas sees it as provocation. In recent days, reports have suggested that American bombers flew near Venezuela's coast. Flight tracking data showed a B-1B bomber approaching Venezuelan airspace before turning back north. B-52s were also spotted circling the same waters. In Venezuela, the flights are seen as a direct challenge to its sovereignty. But President Donald Trump has denied sending bombers.
No, it's not accurate. No, it's false. But we're not happy with Venezuela for a lot of reasons, drugs being one of them.
He later, however, warned that an action by land could be an option.
So now they're coming in by land, and even the land is concerned because I told them that's going to be next. You know, the land is going to be next. And we may go to the Senate, we may go to the, Congress and tell them about it. But I can't imagine they'd have any problem with it.
Those words sent shockwaves through Latin America. Venezuelan officials have accused Washington of preparing for regime change under the cover of a drug war. They have mobilized militias and are holding military drills to prepare for any threat. Meanwhile, the country's President Nicolas Maduro has made a plea for calm. In a mix of English and Spanish, Maduro urged Washington to step back.
No a la guerra, no a la guerra, not war, not war, not war. Just peace, just peace, just peace, forever, forever, forever. Peace forever, no crazy war. Peace forever.
But his call for peace has done little to cool tempers. For now, both nations are locked in a tense standoff. The United States is expanding its military footprint. It has deployed warships, fighter jets, a nuclear submarine, and thousands of troops to the Caribbean. Venezuela, too, is fortifying its defenses. And in the waters between them, the line between counter-narcotics and conflict is getting thinner.
How do you enter an IIT, the Indian Institute of Technology? Most of you may be thinking about the JEE exam. If you score high enough, you get shortlisted for an IIT. But what if I told you that there's another way? In fact, there are two ways. One is a science Olympiad, the other is excellence in sports. And several IITs already do this, like IIT Madras, Kanpur, Bombay, and Gandhinagar. And now IIT Kharagpur is planning to do the same. Instead of a JEE rank, an Olympiad or sport may get you into the college. So how exactly does this work? And is this a good idea? Well, each IIT has different criteria for selection. We'll focus on Kharagpur. They plan to include multiple exams like the International Mathematical Olympiad, the International Physics Olympiad, the International Chemistry Olympiad, the International Informatics Olympiad, plus the National Olympiads will also be considered. If you excel in these, you get a ticket to Kharagpur. But there's one condition. You must qualify for the JEE Advanced. Now, some quick context here. The JEE, the Joint Entrance Exam, has two levels. The first is the main exam. The second is the JEE Advanced exam. If you clear the mains, you can write the advanced. Your rank in the test does not matter. What matters is qualifying for it. The procedure after that has not been decided yet. In Kanpur, for example, you're shortlisted based on the Olympiad, but after that, you must write a test. It's not clear if Kharagpur will go the same route. And the next is the sports route. Again, qualifying for the JEE Advanced is mandatory. After that, the IITs look at your medals. You must have at least one medal from a national or international event, say the World Championships or the Olympics or the Commonwealth Games or the National Games or the Khelo India University Games. And this medal must have come in the last 4 years. Then IIT Kharagpur may consider you. Now, it's certainly an interesting proposition. The college says it wants to attract students from diverse backgrounds. The question is this a good idea? And here's why I ask. In India, there's a laser focus on competitive exams. You study, you write, you pass. The goal is as simple as that, to clear that exam. You could say that it kills extracurricular activities and interests. But for many people, an IIT seat is also a ticket to prosperity. Forget prosperity, it's a ticket out of poverty. So is adding sports or adding Olympiads a good idea? Well, the IITs are doing things differently. They've added new seats to enroll such students. They're not being fitted into existing seats. Consider what IIT Madras did this year. They added 2 extra seats to all their undergraduate courses, and those seats went to Olympiad students. So as things stand, this won't affect the existing pipeline. Your JEE remains sacred. But what about the future? Well, down the line, this is something that India should consider. Yes, marks must have primacy, but other things should have weightage too, like your sporting background or your expertise in social sciences or your literary pursuits. All of these should ideally count as well, because the goal of colleges is not to make robots. The goal is to make well-rounded individuals, people with awareness, people with social skills and compassion. And to be fair, it should not start with the IITs. It should start at school. Right now, sports is just a place filler on your report card. Creative classes are more of a time pass, and your school magazine is for so-called nerds. We need to change this attitude. We must teach our children that they can do multiple things. You can solve a complex sum in seconds, but you can also have fun on the football field. It doesn't have to be a choice. It should not be a choice. If we can do that, then who knows? Maybe sports or Olympiad entries won't be necessary. Our final story tonight is about the NBA, the National Basketball Association. It's the world's biggest basketball league. We're talking about $1 billion empire, home to some of the world's richest athletes and the most watched games. But today the NBA is in the middle of a storm. It's a scandal straight out of a Hollywood crime script. 2 cases have been filed in the US. 34 people have been arrested across 11 American states. At the center of the storm are 2 familiar faces, a head coach and a star player, both accused of working with the mafia. It's one of the most brazen sports corruption cases in modern America. It involves secret bets, rigged poker games, and millions of dollars in illegal profits. So what exactly happened? And how did the mafia end up inside the basketball league? Here's a report.
Under the bright lights of the NBA, a storm is brewing. A league built on glory, money, and trust is facing a scandal straight out of a crime thriller. A coach, a player, and the mafia. The FBI says they weren't just chasing wins, they were chasing money. Millions of dollars made through rigged games and inside information. 2 federal indictments, 34 arrests, 11 states, and a criminal network that prosecutors say blended basketball, betting, and organized crime. It began quietly, in poker rooms and betting apps. Now it's one of the biggest corruption cases in American sport. At the center are 2 familiar faces. Chauncey Billups, the Portland Trail Blazers head coach and NBA Hall of Famer, and Terry Rozier, guard for the Miami Heat. Both, along with others, are charged with wire fraud and money laundering conspiracy. Let's start with Terry Rozier. Prosecutors say he allegedly shared confidential NBA information, secret details about injuries, lineups, and game plans. That information helped his associates place near-guaranteed bets. One game in March 2023 changed everything. Rozier was playing for the Charlotte Hornets. He told friends he would leave the game early with a foot injury. Minutes later, more than $200,000 in bets were placed, all against him. 9 minutes into the first quarter, Rozier walked off the court. Those bets paid out tens of thousands in profit. The FBI says it was not luck, it was fraud. Rozier was arrested in Orlando. He was released on bond and ordered to appear in New York on the 8th of December. His lawyer says prosecutors are chasing a non-case. Then comes Chauncey Billups, the man once called Mr. Big Shot, a champion, a Hall of Famer, now a defendant. Prosecutors say Billups helped lure wealthy gamblers to secret poker games. The games took place in New York, Las Vegas, Miami, and the Hamptons. They looked glamorous, but they were fixed. Hidden cameras, marked cards, contact lenses that could read them, and poker tables fitted with X-ray scanners. Investigators say the machines were altered to read every card in the deck. That data was sent to an operator outside the room. The operator relayed it to a quarterback at the table. The quarterback gave hand signals to the other players. They knew who would win before the cards were even turned. Victims lost at least $7 million. Billups was arrested in Oregon. He was released on bond and will appear in New York on the 24th of November. His lawyer calls him a man of integrity. The FBI says the poker network was backed by the Italian-American mafia. They allegedly controlled the poker circuit. They collected debts through threats and extortion. They laundered money through shell companies and cryptocurrency. FBI Director Kash Patel called the scheme mind-boggling. The NBA moved quickly. Both Billups and Rozier were placed on immediate leave. But the timing could not be worse. The season has just begun. A $76 billion broadcast deal had just taken effect. And now, the headlines read like a crime script. For the NBA, this isn't just a scandal. It's a question of whether the game itself can still be trusted.
Never let a good crisis go to waste. That seems to be the thinking in marketing circles this week. Over the weekend, there was a bold heist at the Louvre Museum. I'm sure you've all read about it and you've seen it on the show. But let me show you what is happening afterwards. Companies are turning this into a marketing moment. Fevicol has a new ad out. They have pasted the stolen necklace to the case using their glue and the caption, "Mission Impossible." If you think that's good, look at the next one. This is a German company that makes lifts. They made the mechanical ladder that was used by the robbers. And the caption, "When you need to move fast." I guess any PR is good PR. And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. In London, an occult museum opens with so-called cursed dolls. A giant Kermit, the frog balloon, takes over a Paris square. And Russian nuclear bombers fly over the Sea of Japan as part of military drills. Finally, we are taking you back in history. On this day in 1945, the United Nations came into existence. The global body began with just 51 member states. It has since expanded to more than 190. The UN has been praised for its humanitarian and socio-cultural work, but remains under fire for its inability to resolve political crises. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. Have a great weekend.
The latest developments?
News that gets straight to the point.
Well, we've got all three just for you. This is Firstpost Live, a brand new show, your window into what really matters.
Don't miss it.